No one is explaining the fragrance game and spilling the tea quite like this.
Money work. El mundo quiere dinero.
With fragrance, like many other things in life, there are levels to this. Today, I'm going to share the inside scoop on fragrance prices. It's going to be entertaining, it's going to be informative, and it's going to empower you when you are purchasing your fragrances. We're going to talk about everything from mass market to luxury. Did you know there was a level beyond luxury? We're also going to talk about niche and why it's not exactly how people describe it. We're going to break it down in a way that's fun and easy to understand, which is one of the advantages of having your very own personal beauty pro. But there's so much more to fragrance beyond the next new release or the same old top 10 list. I love going beyond the surface level stuff. I love the art and the science and the industry and the business behind the way things work. So in addition to fun, glamour, and helping you know how to make the best of your product, I also want to pull the curtain back and let you see the behind the scenes of beauty. Let's talk about the business of fragrance, the levels of fragrance, and where some of your favorite fragrances fall. And just to do a little housekeeping, because I know my audience is fabulous, but you know, from time to time we get someone drifting in who wants to argue. A lot of these categories overlap in different ways, and this is a general overview of information. Of course, there are exceptions and nuances to everything, so we're not going to bicker about the information. We are going to enjoy it. The first fragrance category up is mass market or drugstore. That typically falls in the $10 to $50 range, give or take. You can find them in places like Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Amazon, and Bath and Body Works. They're fragrant and they're fun, but they do tend to be synthetic heavy formulas, so not necessarily a lot of natural fragrance material. They tend to have a large distribution, so they're widely available. Oftentimes they're very trend focused or celebrity driven, and they can also come in the form of EDTs, which are eau de toilettes. There was a time many celebrity fragrances fell in that category too, between the $10 and $50 range, but things have really gotten pricier. Celebrity fragrances are overall generally considered mass market. This next one is going to sound a little obvious, but it does have some nuances. The next category up is designer fragrances. So designer fragrances are quite pricey these days, but nothing stays the same over the years. Designer fragrances now run in the realm of $80 up until $180. You can generally find these at department stores like Macy's or Sephora or Ulta. So some examples would be like Dior or YSL, and I've pulled some examples of them. One of the main features of a designer fragrance is that it's usually backed by a designer, a fashion designer, many times a luxury or high-end fashion designer. So the fragrances, generally speaking, tend to be a better level of quality than something you would get mass market. So this is Giorgio Armani's My Way. The House of Chanel obviously is a fabulous fashion designer and well known for their handbags too. Coco Noir is one of their designer fragrances. Yves Saint Laurent, the YSL, this particular one is Libre. The other standout about designer fragrances is that they usually have a broad appeal. They have a touch of luxury, but they're also commercial, so they are made to appeal to a wide variety of tastes. They're going to smell good to a broad audience, and they're not going to smell really foreign or too intricate or complex. Some of them, well made, can have a very pretty complexity. They usually have very heavy marketing and visibility. Sometimes they have a celebrity as the face of the fragrance. But here's the interesting thing. Those designer fragrances can also fall in our next category, which is prestige fragrances. Your prestige fragrances can range from $100 to $250, but the fragrances I just mentioned are also considered prestige fragrances. Prestige fragrances can be a bit more refined, certainly more refined than mass market, and considered a bit more refined than mid-tier. A lot of times they can have higher concentration or better quality, often still rely on synthetic notes, but they tend to be of a better quality. One popular fragrance that falls in the prestige category that people sometimes miscategorize is Kayali. Kayali is considered a prestige fragrance, and this particular fragrance actually won in its category in the recent Fragrance Foundation Award. Your prestige fragrances are generally sold in some of the locations I mentioned earlier, like Sephora, but also Nordstrom, Bloomingdale. Now this next category is where it gets tricky, and that is the niche category. Now, when we're talking about price range of niche, people sometimes mistakenly associate niche with just the highest of luxury, the highest of price. That's not a qualifier for something to be niche, although it can fall in the higher price category. General range, you will find somewhere between $150 and $400. It can often be independent or perfumer owned. It's usually art forward or concept driven. There's a smaller distribution, so it's not always as widely available as your designer or prestige fragrances. Many times there are more natural ingredients. Oftentimes there are bolder compositions, and there are oftentimes genderless. They can be masculine and feminine, but many times you'll find them unisex. An example of a niche fragrance would be houses like Nishane. Also, Amouage is a niche fragrance house, but like I said at the beginning, some of these lines can get blurred, so it's also a luxury to ultra luxury fragrance house, and we're going to get to that ultra luxury category soon. But now here's the catch about niche, because Demeter, I have this really fun fragrance called Banana Flambe, can also kind of be considered the niche category. They're a very particular, specific concept driven house, and they design fragrances according to specific notes or memories, but this will only run you maybe about $20. So you see, niche doesn't always mean expensive. Now these are more of a cologne formulation, so they don't last very long, but they smell delicious while they last. The brand Maison Francis Kurkdjian can also be considered niche, but now it's kind of more widely distributed, so it kind of straddles that line between niche and luxury as well. Other examples are Diptyque and Byredo. Brands like Kriegler, a couple of which are on my wish list, are also niche, but it's in the ultra luxury category. It's a rare, historic, ultra luxe brand. It appeals to fragrance collectors and fragrance connoisseurs. Also have an option of more bespoke fragrances, and a Kriegler fragrance can go well into the thousands. So let's talk about that luxury and ultra luxury category. Luxury to ultra luxury category can go from about $300 to $800 easily. Now these you can typically find at Saks, Bergdorf, Neiman's, Harrods, Selfridges, and exclusive boutiques. As I mentioned earlier, Amouage is one of those brands that is both niche and luxury, but some of Amouage fragrances can lean into that ultra luxury category, especially their extraits. This is a Guidance 46 gorgeous fragrance. Another one that goes from luxury to ultra luxury is Raja Parfum, and you may often hear this referred to as Roja, which is a pet peeve of mine. I have only heard 2 people on the internet pronounce Raja correctly, and one of them is Raja himself.
My name is Roger Dove. I'm the perfumer of Roger Parfum.
Everybody, I'm Roger Dove. I'm Roger Dove.
And fun fact, the perfumer behind this, his given name actually is Roger Bird, and he elevated that to Raja Dove. So that's the background behind the name and the pronunciation. The brand is Raja Parfums. He has quite a background and a history with fragrance, and the house has a beautiful library of scents. This one is ultra feminine. This is Elixir. This is the Parfum. There was also a release of some essence type of formulations, which I guess would kind of be the equivalent to an EDT, but it's the perfumes that are really the showstoppers. One of my favorite fragrance house falls in a unique place in the fragrance hierarchy, and that is the house of Guerlain. Now, Guerlain is a luxury heritage house. So it's historic and it's global. It's now under LVMH, so it carries anything from prestige up to very high luxury. Guerlain is a respected icon among those in the fragrance industry. But no matter what level Guerlain does, they are all gorgeous, have a uniqueness, they have a presence, and they are just beautiful and luscious. This is Mon Guerlain, so this would fall more in the prestige lineup. A beautiful sweet vanilla lavender. But then approaching the luxury would be something in this lineup. This is Santal Royale. This is a beautiful, smoky, slightly sweetened, woody fragrance. This is Tobacco Honey. This is in their Arts and Material line, which is definitely in the luxury category. And Guerlain does have other fragrances in the ultra luxe category. Next is the private or exclusive lines, and these are usually higher level lines within a designer house. Oftentimes these can range somewhere between $250 and $500, and they are usually sold in the actual brand's boutique. So if you go to Dior or Chanel, that's where you usually find their exclusive private line, and high-end department stores carry them often as well. Louis Vuitton fragrances would kind of fall in this category. These usually have higher quality and more exclusivity than their mainline scents. Marketing is usually much more subtle, and it usually has elevated storytelling behind the fragrances and higher quality ingredients. So I pulled some examples of those for you. So here is Armani. So My Way, the Giorgio Armani fragrance, would fall in the designer prestige, but this Rouge Malachite is in the Armani Privé line or the elevated line. Something like Miss Dior would be a designer fragrance, but the Dior Collection Privé would be their elevated line. They have really been revamping the elevated line and removing some favorites from the line, and it's just so sad to see them go. Really wish I had gotten the largest bottle of Fève Delicieuses, but it took me a while to understand the fragrance, and by the time I fell in love with it and wanted a larger bottle, they had already discontinued it. Here's what I'm hoping. Francis Kurkdjian is at the helm creating fragrances there now. I am hoping that he's going to do an interpretation of Fève Delicieuses. Now that could be all in just my hopes and dreams. That's what I'm hoping, because he did reimagine some of their other popular fragrances like Rouge Trafalgar. Here's another good example of a designer house elevated line versus their designer main line. So YSL Libre would be in YSL's main designer scent line, whereas Baby Cat by YSL would be their elevated line. Chanel also has a l'exclusive line. Whatever category your favorite fragrance falls in, wear it well and keep it pretty.